They say that absence makes the heart grow fonder. But let's be honest, when you care about someone, waiting for them to miss you can feel like torture. You check your phone more than you'd ever admit. You rewind every last conversation in your mind, looking for clues, looking for signs. You wonder, is he thinking of me? Is he missing me the way I miss him? But what if I told you the secret isn't in the waiting? What if I told you that there are silent forces, undeniable magnetic forces, that can make a man think of you not just occasionally, but obsessively? What if you could activate those forces, not through manipulation, not through desperation, but by stepping into your own irresistible power? Because here's the truth no one tells you loudly enough. Making a man miss you has far less to do with what you do for him and everything to do with what you awaken within him. You don't need to chase. You don't need to beg for crumbs of attention. You don't need to lose sleep wondering what you did wrong. Because this journey we're about to take together, it's not about tricks or games. It's about transformation. It's about learning how to become the woman a man doesn't just want but aches to be near. And by the end of this, you won't just understand how to make any man miss you. You'll understand why he didn't before. You'll understand the missing link that most women never uncover. The link between your self-worth, your emotional presence, and the invisible signal you send into his world long after you leave the room. So let me take you back to a quiet street in Paris, 1942. There was a woman. Her name was Elizabeth. She wasn't the most beautiful woman in the city. Not by the impossible standards of the time. She didn't wear the finest dresses, and her perfume wasn't imported. But every man who met her, they remembered her. Every man who shared a conversation with her. They felt haunted by it. One man, an officer who only knew her for 3 nights before he had to leave the city, once said she was the kind of woman you dream of during war. And do you know why? It wasn't because she tried to impress him. It was because she made him feel seen in a way that the world never had. She asked questions. She listened like every word mattered. And when she laughed, my God, when she laughed, it was like she gave him permission to come alive again. He said she left his life quietly, but her presence echoed in his bones for years. That is the essence of what we're unlocking here. Because men, no matter how stoic, how confident, how successful, miss one thing above all else when it's gone. The woman who made them feel something real. But we live in a world that tells women to hide that magic, to tone it down, to not be too much. And so, in trying to be enough, many women lose the very thing that made them unforgettable in the first place. So how do you bring it back? You start by understanding the first of the 7 powerful ways to make a man miss you. Not just today, not just when he's bored, but in the quiet moments when he least expects it. When he's with someone else and he realizes she doesn't feel like you. And that first principle is this. 1, don't be everywhere. Be unforgettable. There's a tragic misconception that to be remembered, you have to be constantly available. Constantly posting, constantly updating your presence in a man's world like a status ticker. But let me ask you this, when was the last time you missed someone who was always around? We miss what's rare. We miss what leaves a mark. We miss the energy that walks away before we're ready to let go. Imagine a beautiful scent that lingers on a scarf long after the person who wore it is gone. That's how your emotional presence should feel. You don't need to flood him with messages to be in his mind. In fact, the more you do, the more you dull your magic. Instead, let your presence be intentional. Let your energy be like a note that plays once, but perfectly. Every time you step into a room, a conversation, a moment with him, let it count. Bring your full self, your humor, your vulnerability, your soul. Don't try to impress. Just be vivid in a world full of static, because that kind of presence, that kind of aliveness, it doesn't need constant reminders. It imprints itself on the soul. I once met a woman who said something that stopped me in my tracks. She said, I don't want to be someone's option. I want to be someone's echo. That's the mindset. That's the shift. And do you know what's beautiful? You can become unforgettable without ever losing your dignity, without chasing, without lowering your standards. In fact, those things are part of what makes your absence felt. Which brings me to the second principle, to create space, not distance. There's a difference, and most people don't understand it. Distance feels like punishment. It feels like withdrawal, cold silence, games. But space is sacred. Space allows desire to breathe. It allows curiosity to grow. It allows a man to reach for you rather than simply react to your presence. When you create space, you're saying, I'm not abandoning this connection. I'm trusting it. You're giving him the room to feel, to notice, to recognize that something is missing. And it's in that space that the most powerful realization happens. He begins to value what he's afraid to lose. Do you remember the first time someone's silence hit you harder than their words? That's because their absence carried emotional weight. Their presence had become a part of your internal rhythm. And suddenly it was gone. That contrast, that's what plants the seed of missing someone. So don't be afraid of space. It's not the enemy, it's the invitation. The invitation for him to move towards you, not out of obligation, but because something in his soul is drawn back to the way you made him feel. And let's go even deeper. 3. Cultivate a life that breathes mystery. Let me tell you something most dating coaches won't. Men don't miss you when you revolve around them. They miss you when your world is so alive, so textured, so lit with your own passions that they feel like tourists in a city they haven't fully explored. Think of the people you've longed for. Was it because they needed you all the time? Or was it because their world felt like an adventure you wanted to be part of? So many women lose their sense of mystery in the name of love. They over-explain. They overshare. They try to anticipate a man's every need in hopes of proving how loving they can be. But in doing so, they become predictable. And predictability is the enemy of longing. Let him wonder. Let him ask, what is she up to today? Let him feel that electric pull of not having access to every corner of your world. Because when a man feels like there's more to discover in you, he'll crave proximity. He'll think of you not just when he's lonely, but when he's alive and wanting to share it with someone who understands depth. Now listen closely, because what I'm about to say may sting a little, but it's essential. You do not become unforgettable by being available. You become unforgettable by being irreplaceable. And to become irreplaceable, you must stop fearing who you'll lose and start honoring who you truly are. A woman who knows her value doesn't need to beg to be remembered. Her essence does the work long after she's gone, and this brings us to one of the deepest truths of all. 4. Emotional resonance leaves a deeper mark than physical beauty. You can be the most stunning woman in the world and still be forgotten. Or you can be a woman who touches something inside a man that no one else dares to reach and live in his mind for the rest of his life. You want to make a man miss you. Make him feel emotionally seen. In a world where most people scroll past each other like wallpaper, be the woman who asks questions no one else does. Be the one who listens to the answers. Be the one who says things that make him pause, not because you flatter his ego, but because you speak to his soul. You don't need to fake depth. You just need to stop hiding yours. Men, especially men who are emotionally guarded, don't even realize how starved they are for someone who truly gets them. Until they meet that person. And once they do, every conversation after that feels like noise. And here's where we tie it all together for this first leg of the journey. Making a man miss you is not about withholding affection. It's about giving the kind of presence, depth, and radiant energy that cannot be duplicated. And then stepping back just enough for him to notice the silence. Because in that silence, he won't just hear echoes of your voice. He'll feel the absence of being truly seen, and that is unforgettable. But we're just getting started. In the next chapter of this journey, we'll unlock 3 more powerful shifts, ways of being that not only stir a man's longing, but make him question why he ever let you go in the first place. And we'll go even deeper, into your power, into your essence, into the part of you that no man can forget. Are you ready to keep going? There's a strange moment that happens in the mind of a man when he starts to miss you, not just lightly, not just out of habit, but deeply. It doesn't happen when you're texting him every morning. It doesn't happen when you're reminding him constantly that you care. It happens in the quiet, in the stillness, when there's nothing there but the memory of how you made him feel. And in that moment, when he finds himself scrolling through photos he thought he forgot, or hearing a song that somehow carries the rhythm of your laugh, he begins to feel something he didn't expect. A pull, a yearning, a dull ache that reminds him that something rare has left the room. That's when the shift begins. But it only happens if you've planted the seed the right way. And this is where so many women go wrong, not out of malice, but out of fear. Fear of being forgotten. Fear of losing their chance. Fear that if they don't hold tight, they'll disappear from his mind completely. But let me tell you a secret that most never learn. You are never forgotten when your presence is felt in the soul. The world has enough pretty faces, enough filtered photos, enough casual connections that burn bright for a moment and then vanish like smoke. But what the world doesn't have enough of, what men don't even know they're starving for, is emotional gravity. And that brings us to the fifth key, one of the most powerful, most misunderstood ways to make a man miss you. 5. Become the mirror he didn't know he needed. When you reflect a man's truth, not the image he shows the world, not the mask he wears to survive, but his truth, you become someone he cannot forget. Because in your presence, he didn't just feel seen, he saw himself. Now, this isn't about fixing him. It's not about healing him. That's not your job. Your job is to stand in your own wholeness so clearly, so unapologetically, that you naturally hold up a mirror to those around you. A mirror that says, I see what's real, even the parts you try to hide. Think of the people you've missed most in your life. The ones who come to mind in quiet moments, uninvited but undeniable. Chances are they were the ones who reflected back a version of yourself you almost forgot existed. They believed in you. They reminded you of your own beauty. They saw through your defenses. That kind of connection is unforgettable. It carves out a space in the heart that no one else can quite fill. I remember hearing the story of a man who had everything. Success, charm, influence. But he couldn't stop thinking about a woman he dated for just 3 months, 10 years ago. When asked why, he said something remarkable. She made me feel like I could stop pretending. She didn't try to fix him. She didn't chase him. She just saw him. And because of that, he carried her with him every day after. So ask yourself, do you bring light to the men you meet? Or do you dim your own because you're afraid it might be too much? Your emotional clarity, your authenticity, your willingness to be real, that is the very thing that will haunt a man in the most beautiful way, because in your eyes he saw something rare. And in your absence he realizes how rare it truly was. But here's the crucial part. You cannot reflect someone's truth if you are not standing firmly in your own. And this leads us to the 6th truth, a truth that most people fear to confront, but once you embrace it, you become truly magnetic. 6, walk away with grace before he expects it. Let that settle in your bones for a second, not in anger, not in spite, not as a weapon or a punishment, but with grace, with dignity, with love even. Because the most unforgettable exits are not loud, they're not messy, they're not destructive. They are the kind that leave a man stunned, breathless, asking himself, how did I lose her? Most women wait too long. They wait for confirmation, for closure, for a sign that it's okay to leave. But the truth is, if you wait until you're emptied out, your absence won't be felt. It will be expected. But if you leave while you're still glowing, still soft, still whole, your departure becomes a question that lingers in his mind long after you're gone. Oh, why did she go? Have done something differently? Or did I take her for granted? That silence becomes a lesson, and that lesson becomes a longing. There's a story of a woman named Annika. She was deeply in love with a man who never quite chose her. He liked her. He enjoyed her company, but he never committed. And she waited for months, then a year, hoping that if she just held on a little longer, he'd finally realize she was the one. But then one day, with no anger, no drama, no tears, she simply let go. She left behind a note that said, I loved you, but I love myself more. She didn't block him. She didn't lash out. She just left with peace. Years later, he told a friend, she's the one that got away. And I didn't even see it until she was gone. There is power in quiet exits, especially when they come from self-respect, not resentment. So if you want to be missed, not for what you tolerated, but for who you are, leave while your love is still shining. Leave while your energy is still warm. Let your last impression be one of grace, not bitterness, because people don't miss the version of you that's begging. They miss the version that was glowing when they couldn't see it. And now we arrive at the final and most transformative key, the one that changes everything. 7, fall in love with your own life so deeply that he has no choice but to want back in. This is not a cliche. This is not some feel-good Instagram quote. This is the core truth of attraction. When a woman is lit from within, when she is connected to her purpose, her passion, her friends, her joy, she becomes a gravitational force. Men feel it, even from across the room, even from across time. Because a woman who is in love with life isn't waiting to be chosen. She has already chosen herself, and that's the kind of woman a man doesn't just miss. He remembers forever. So take the trip. Start the business, dance in your kitchen, paint your soul onto a canvas, pour into your friendships. Build your dreams, write the book, learn the language, buy yourself the flowers, live, not because it will make him miss you, though it will, but because you are worth missing, you are worth loving, you are worth being pursued. Not for the role you play in someone else's life, but for the world you create in your own. And here's the part they never tell you. The moment you stop waiting for someone to return, that's the moment they start to feel the pull, because your energy shifts. Your presence expands. Your silence becomes confident, not wounded. Your absence speaks for itself. You are no longer trying to be chosen. You've become the prize. The rare, radiant, magnetic woman who knows her worth, owns her space, and carries her heart with honor. That's who you are. So when he misses you, and he will, he won't just miss the way you looked. He'll miss the way you made him feel. He'll miss the conversations that stirred his soul. He'll miss the depth, the softness, the challenge. The way you smiled at your own thoughts, the way you didn't need him, but still chose to open your heart. That's unforgettable. And whether he comes back or not, that's not the point, because this isn't about him. It's about you. It's about reclaiming your power, your joy, your sense of self. It's about becoming so complete in who you are that missing you becomes the most human, most undeniable reaction to your absence. Let that be your new standard. And the next time you ask yourself, does he miss me? I hope you remember, a woman who chooses herself is never truly forgotten. She is remembered in silence, in regret, in longing, and in love that never quite found a way to match the depth she carried in her eyes. We've now revealed all 7 powerful ways to make a man miss you. But in truth, what we've unlocked goes far beyond dating. It's about stepping into your emotional and personal power. You are magnetic, you are divine, and you deserve to be felt not just when you're near, but long after you've gone. Somewhere in the heart of Paris, beneath the soft glow of a cafe lamp and the low hum of a saxophone playing on the corner, a woman sits alone at a small round table. Her lipstick is wine red, her presence quiet but captivating. She isn't scrolling through her phone. She isn't fidgeting or looking around nervously. She's sipping her drink slowly, thoughtfully, lost in a world of her own. And every man that passes her, whether they glance for a second or stop to steal a longer look, feels something. Something subtle. Something that doesn't shout but lingers. Something that whispers, there's a story here. A life. A woman with depth. That's the kind of presence that stays with someone. It's not about what she wore. It's not about her hair. It's about the way she carried herself. Like a secret that didn't need to be told, only lived. That image, that energy, that's what we're really talking about. Making a man miss you isn't about playing games. It's not about withholding affection or trying to manipulate his emotions. It's about living a life and cultivating a self that is so alive, so vibrant, so unmistakably full, that your absence creates a space no one else can fill. But what does that actually look like in real life? How do you embody that, woman? Let's get honest. To become unforgettable, you must first become someone you can't forget. So many women abandon themselves in the pursuit of love. They trade their passion for patience, their opinions for approval, their dreams for a seat at someone else's table. And then they wonder why they feel invisible. But here's a truth you must memorize. You cannot make a man miss a version of you that you've abandoned. Version of you that sparkled before he walked in. The one who laughed from her belly, who spoke with fire, who danced even when no one watched. That version is the one he'll remember. That version is the one he'll ache for, not the watered-down shadow you became trying to keep him. Take back your fullness, your loud laugh, your weird hobbies, your quiet mornings, your hunger for more. He can't miss what you've buried. You have to bring you back first. And when you do, the shift is seismic. Because when you start living from your core, not from fear, not from lack, but from self-honoring, you become something no man can quite replicate. You are no longer a woman he can replace. You become a woman he regrets losing. Let me tell you about Grace. Grace was the kind of woman who made everyone feel seen. She had this calm warmth, The kind that made people lean in closer when she spoke. She dated a man for 2 years who never truly appreciated her. He liked her presence, but he never gave her more than crumbs. One day, she looked at herself in the mirror and realized she had disappeared. So she did the bravest thing she'd ever done. She walked away, not because she hated him, but because she finally remembered who she was. And instead of collapsing, she came alive. She took up pottery. She started a podcast. She traveled to Lisbon and met strangers who became lifelong friends. She cried some nights. Yes, but she didn't crawl back. She poured herself into the life she was meant to live. A year later, he messaged her, not to start over, just to say, "I've never met anyone like you since. I don't think I ever will." And maybe she still loved him, but by then, her love for herself had grown louder. So she smiled, thanked him, and kept walking forward. See, when you nourish your soul, you become a landscape someone remembers long after the map is lost. The cafe where they laughed with you, the scent you wore on summer nights, the way you looked at them, not with need, but with knowing. Those things stay, and no one can imitate them. Now I want to speak to the part of you that's been waiting. The part that wonders, when is it my turn? The part that whispers, why do I always care more? Here's the truth that stings before it frees you. The man who didn't see your value may not be capable of missing you in the way you deserve to be missed. Because some people don't have the emotional depth to recognize what they lost. That's not your fault. It's not your job to stay long enough to convince them. It's your job to leave soon enough to protect yourself. And if he didn't miss you, that's the evidence. Not of your unworthiness, but of his emotional limits. Still, the man who is ready, who is capable, who has the heart and the soul and the depth, he will miss you, not because you played it cool, but because you were unforgettable. You showed up fully, you loved without apology. You carried yourself like someone who knew exactly what she brought to the table. And then, when it was no longer enough for you, you stood up and left the table. That's what marks a man. That's what haunts him. Not the text you didn't send. Not the silence you weaponized, but the love you offered cleanly, fully, boldly, and the choice you made to walk away with your head high. Let's take a moment now to go deeper. There's a woman in history, Queen Nefertiti of ancient Egypt, whose image is still studied, worshipped, and admired thousands of years after her reign. Not because of vanity, but because of presence. She was known not just for beauty, but for power, for intelligence, for influence. She stood beside her husband as an equal, not beneath him as an ornament. She wasn't a chosen. She chose herself, her place, her impact. And centuries later, people still talk about her. Now imagine that power in your life. Imagine becoming the woman whose energy outlives her presence. That's not a fantasy, that's a decision. To show up fully, to love deeply, but to walk away quickly when respect is gone. To embody such clarity that your name alone brings a pause into his breath. Do you think he'll forget that? Never. Because when you become the woman who knows her value, not just intellectually but emotionally, you don't have to make anyone miss you. You become unmissable. So here's the path. Start loving the life you're in, not because someone is watching, not because you hope they'll come back, but because this is your only one. Because you deserve mornings filled with purpose, days soaked in joy, and nights wrapped in peace. Let your life become the very thing someone longs to be a part of. Let your absence teach him what your presence gave, and let his missing you become a byproduct of how fully you loved, not a currency you chase. Now take a breath. You've come far. You've peeled back layers that society asked you to wear. You've faced the mirror. You've remembered your name. You've reclaimed your glow. And you've taken back the power you once handed over with trembling hands. You're no longer wondering if he's thinking of you. Because you're too busy thinking of you. Your healing, your joy, your next chapter. That's where your power lives. And trust me, when he sees you again, in person or in memory, he won't remember the texts or the fights or the silence. He'll remember the woman who woke something up in him. And he'll wonder if you'll ever feel that again. Because when a woman rises from her own ashes, when she chooses peace over pressure, when she smiles from her soul instead of her desperation, she becomes the kind of woman who is missed in the deepest sense. He may find someone else, he may move on, but he will never replace you. Because you weren't an option, you were a lesson, you were a mirror, you were a flame, you were home, and nothing compares to that. There is a moment, a delayed awakening, that happens in the mind of a man who once had access to a woman's heart and no longer does. At first, it's subtle. It may come days or weeks after you leave. Maybe he's scrolling through his phone past a photo you're no longer in. Or maybe he's at a party laughing with someone new, and suddenly something hits. The way her laugh doesn't quite reach him like yours did. A small discomfort, a flicker of recognition. Then comes the memory. Not of what you looked like, but of what it felt like to be around you. And that's when the ache begins. He may not message you immediately. He may not say a word, but he will replay your voice in his head. The way you supported him when he was silent. The way your presence calmed storms he never spoke about. The way you were there, not just in body, but in spirit. Because here's the truth, you understand. You don't need to be near someone for them to feel you. You don't even need to speak. Your impact when it came from depth and authenticity echoes like a familiar song in the distance, like the scent of a season long gone. You linger, and that lingering, that's where the missing begins. But this only happens when you've left something real behind, something they didn't find again. Something that spoke to their soul, not just their senses. You see, lust is easily replaced. Attention is cheap, but connection, that's rare. And once a man has tasted it, true emotional connection with a woman who knows her worth, he can try to replace it. But he will always come up short. Let's talk about that moment when he comes back. Because if you embody everything we've spoken about, he will. Maybe it's a text. Maybe he watches your story a little too often. Maybe he reaches out just to check in. Don't be surprised, but don't be shaken either. Because here's what most women do wrong at this point. They get pulled back in. Not because he's changed, but because they still need closure. Still want validation. Still crave to be chosen, even after all this time. But darling, listen closely. The moment he comes back is not your reward. It's your test. Will you settle for crumbs again? Will you mistake his nostalgia for commitment? Will you betray the growth you've earned just to hear him say, I miss you? Or will you remember who you've become? The woman who didn't just survive heartbreak, but alchemized it. Who built herself a new home out of the ruins of a broken connection. Who filled her life so fully that she no longer needed his presence to feel complete. When he comes back, he will want access to the woman you've become. But not everyone deserves backstage passes to a show they once walked out on. So before you respond, ask yourself, does he miss me? Or does he miss who I was when I tolerated less? That question alone will save you years of unnecessary pain. And if he's sincere, if he's grown, if he shows up not with apologies, but with changed behavior, consistency, and real emotional maturity, then, and only then, does he deserve a seat at the table again. But even then, don't give him the same chair. Let him earn a new one. You're not who you were. You've evolved. You've peeled back layers, stitched up wounds, and planted gardens where there was once fire. You are reborn, and the woman you are now does not negotiate her value for the comfort of old stories. If he wants to be in your life again, he must rise. He must meet you where you are, not drag you back to where you've been. Now, let's take this further. Let's talk about the long-term effect your growth has, not just on him, but on every room you walk into. Because when a woman begins to walk in her power, not perform it, not pretend it, but truly live it, she changes the entire atmosphere around her. People feel her without her saying a word. Men don't just look at her, they notice her. Because she is not asking to be chosen, she already is. By herself. She's not auditioning for love. She's inviting partnership. She's not chasing energy. She's curating peace. She's not performing worth. She's embodying it. And from that place, she becomes unforgettable. Not for what she wore. Not for what she did in bed, but for the way she made people feel more alive simply by being who she is. You want a man to miss you, then becomes so rooted in your truth that he can't unsee it, becomes so lit with joy that even your absence carries warmth. Become so deeply invested in your own evolution that missing you isn't a punishment. It's a consequence of not rising with you. This kind of presence cannot be manufactured. It is earned through quiet nights of self-reflection, through choosing yourself when it's hard, through walking away when your heart still aches, through rebuilding your self-worth not from outside validation, but from the ground of your own soul. And when you do this, You don't just make him miss you. You make him question every shallow connection he has after you. You make him realize the difference between comfort and connection, between attention and affection, between a placeholder and a partner. And even if he doesn't say it, even if his pride won't allow him to admit it, he will compare every woman to the depth of your gaze, the safety of your presence, the elegance of your absence, because you gave what no one else did, real love grounded in real self-worth. Let's talk about you now, because this journey isn't about a man anymore. This is your becoming. This is your rebirth. You are not the same woman who started this video. You've remembered your power. You've reclaimed your presence. You've started building a life where you are the main character, not the supporting actress in someone else's drama. And from here forward, everything changes. Your standards rise, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. Your energy shifts not out of spite, but out of sovereignty. Your presence evolves not to prove something, but to protect something. You are not hard to love. You are hard to manipulate. You are not a too much. You are more than enough for the right heart. You are not intimidating. You are a mirror, and some people aren't ready to see their reflection. So as you walk forward, I want you to carry this truth like armor. You were never meant to be background noise in someone's story. You were meant to be the heartbeat, the kind of presence that awakens something deeper. The kind of love that challenges, nourishes, and expands, and if he missed that, that's not your loss, it's his. But your story, it's just beginning. You've become unforgettable, not because you were the loudest, the prettiest, or the most available, but because you were real, because you chose self-respect over validation, because you walked with your heart open and your boundaries firm, because you dared to leave, not to punish, but to protect the sacred space within you. That is the kind of woman no man ever forgets. That is the kind of woman who is missed months, years, lifetimes later. There's a certain kind of silence that comes after the storm, the kind not born from emptiness, but from resolution. It is not lonely. It is not cold. It is sacred. And if you listen closely, you can hear something inside of it, yourself. That voice inside you, once drowned out by the noise of wanting to be seen, chosen, loved, it now speaks with clarity. It says, you are enough. You have always been enough. And from this moment forward, you will never forget that again. This is where we end this journey, not with desperate longing, not with tricks or tactics to haunt someone's memory, but with the deepest truth of all. You don't need to make a man miss you. You need to remember who you are. Because here's what no one tells you, the most powerful way to leave a lasting imprint on someone's heart is to live fully in your own. To build a life so rich in self-respect, joy, purpose, and authenticity that when someone steps out of your world, they feel it like a cold wind against a door that used to open easily, but no longer does. They'll wonder, what changed? And the answer will be, you did. You stopped chasing the man who wouldn't choose you. You stopped waiting for breadcrumbs from someone who had a feast in front of him and still starved you. You stopped trying to be unforgettable in his eyes and instead became unforgettable in your own. That's when everything shifted. That's when your glow turned from a spark into a blaze. Let's return for a moment to a woman we all know, even if only as an archetype. She doesn't cry in bathrooms over unread texts anymore. She doesn't reread messages looking for hidden meanings. She doesn't check who's watching her stories to feel visible, because she doesn't seek her value outside of herself. She knows she is valuable. She has built a life that breathes with her rhythm. She moves through rooms not hoping to be seen, but knowing she has nothing to prove. And when a man meets her, he doesn't just meet a potential partner. He meets a standard. This woman is not a test he passes or fails. She is a mirror that shows him who he really is and whether or not he's ready to rise. Some men run from her. Not because she's wrong for them, but because she reveals the work they haven't done. But the right man sees her, not as a challenge to conquer, but as a partner to honor. And when he's not ready, when he's careless or uncertain, and he loses her, oh, he misses her. Not because she begged to be remembered, but because she made her presence felt through how she showed up in love, and in her absence, that kind of presence cannot be replaced. Let me tell you a story this time about a woman named Ava. Ava was vibrant, magnetic, deeply kind. She had a relationship with a man who said all the right things, but never followed through. He kept her in limbo, feeding her just enough hope to keep her holding on. One night, after another broken promise, Ava didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply stood up, looked him in the eye and said, "This is the last time you confuse access with value." She walked away and never looked back. 2 years later, he saw her on a TEDx stage talking about emotional availability, about worth, about choosing yourself. She wasn't bitter. She wasn't angry. She had transformed her pain into purpose. He didn't just miss her. He ached. But by then, Ava had learned something most people never do. If a man cannot see your light, that does not mean you were meant to dim it. It means he was not your mirror. You want to make a man miss you. Become a woman who will never again abandon herself. The kind of woman who dances barefoot in her kitchen just because the song feels like freedom. Who writes her own story, not waiting for a romantic subplot to give her character. Who keeps rising, whether she's applauded or not. Who doesn't shrink for love, but expands and invites someone to meet her there. You want to leave a mark? Then love from a place of fullness. Walk away from a place of peace. Speak from a place of truth. And live from a place of self-devotion so deep, so holy, that to lose you is to lose the experience of being near something real. Now, let's be clear. This isn't about ego. This isn't about arrogance. This isn't about believing you're above anyone. It's about finally understanding that you were never meant to be loved halfway. You were never meant to beg to be chosen. You were never meant to feel like a burden for having needs. You are always meant to be met with wholeness. And until someone can meet you there, you choose solitude over settling. Because solitude with your dignity intact is sweeter than companionship that costs your soul. So here is the truth we end with. The 7 powerful ways to make a man miss you. They were never about him. They were about you, living your truth without apology, cultivating mystery not from game playing, but from inner richness, creating space for someone to earn your presence, not simply consume it, walking away when respect fades, quickly, cleanly, and without drama. Building a life so fulfilling that it doesn't need anyone's validation to shine. Investing in your growth, your peace, and your purpose, and loving with depth, but only where depth is mirrored. When you do this, you become not a chapter in someone's life, but the one that changed the whole story. You want to be missed? Then don't be available to the mediocre. Don't be accessible to the inconsistent. Don't be open to those who only knock when they're lonely. Be the woman who doesn't settle for half love. Be the woman who walks alone with grace when she must. Be the woman who doesn't chase being missed because she knows that what she carries cannot be forgotten, ever. And one day someone will tell a story about you, maybe to their friend, maybe to their therapist, maybe just to themselves at 2 a.m. when their soul is tired. And they'll say, I once knew someone, and I didn't realize it then, but she was the one I should have held on to. And by then you'll be long gone, not bitter, not broken, just free, because the story wasn't about being missed. The story was about becoming the kind of woman who will never again need to be. Because she never left herself behind to be loved by anyone else. You are that woman, and your time is now. Let them miss you, but never miss yourself again.